airport Monday morning.
Yeah.
Experience. The worst part about it is they put it in a cardboard box that says human remains on it.
Well, that's to be able to tell them that they have to handle it a certain way, both this end and that end. Yeah. Okay, our learning sponsors, the Year of Learning by Sue and Arnie Garelick, in memory of Malcolm Perlman and Philip Mann, and Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ben Beryl ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Henya Rivka Pro Rosna bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, in memory of family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Leslie and Gail Kaplan in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedell Irving and Pearl Kaplan, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Saratova bat Yisrael Dov in her memory, Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata bat Asher, friends of Nina Monester, Nechama Osner bat Yitzchak Aharon, many friends of Stephen Vigdor, Lezecher Nishmat, Simcha Melech ben Meir Leib Halevi, friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha. A month of learning, Lydia and Abe Krause's many friends in honor of their 50th anniversary. David and Mindel Cheslow in memory of his father, Moshe ben Ruvain Mordechai. Susan and Reuven Podolsky in memory of her father, Simcha Buna ben Yeshua. Week of learning by David and Sharon Carpel, Rabbi Tzvi and Robin Carpel, in memory of David and Tzvi's mother, Malka bat Mordechai. Dr. Mark Scher in memory of his father, Mordechai ben Menachem Ramish. Ruth Kosman in memory of her husband, Shmuel ben Yitzchak. Carol and David Kaplan in memory of Hannah and Ron Goldberg's daughter, Tamar Yenta bat Yerachmiel Yitzchak. Judy Iger in memory of her husband, Aaron ben Shlomo Mikhail. Henya and Shmuel Novak in memory of her father, Zeb ben Shimshon. Mayor and Sarah Breben, Michael and Golda Breben, in memory of Mayor and Michael's mother, Bela bat Elimelech. Isaac and Eda Novik in memory of his father, Eliezer Yaakov ben Mordechai Tzvi. And we have a day of learning today, being the 26th, okay, by Judy Iger, in memory of her mother-in-law, Necha bat Yitzchak, by Nina and Steve Levine, in memory of her father, Yisrael ben Shmuel, and that is it. May the neshamas have an aliyah, Krank Rafia, Velti Yeshua Shamatliya, and L'chol b'nei Israel a good gebench.
Amen.
Okay. And we're also learning and all that, and for Refuah Shlema for Elisheva Yael Bat Sarah. Okay. All right. I don't see Bob this morning, but he may join in still. All right. So we're going to finish the parak today, and then we're going to get to a new parak, which I'll take a couple of minutes to introduce. Okay. I always encourage, whether you use Koren or you use Art Scroll, always try to read the introduction to the parak. They approach it differently, but nevertheless, they give you each gives a good overview of what the parak is going to deal with. Okay. All right. Sometimes Art Scroll does it, in a separate, as it does separate page there too, things like that. Also, Koren does the same thing. So we were in a discussion in the Gemara, okay, where it ended on the top of Nun Amud Aleph, page 50a, okay, where it said basically some discussion. Gave a question of verses that seem to disagree between what Isaiah said in his book and what the Torah says by Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay? And even though there was a discussion of that in relationship to whether or not King Manasseh killed the prophet Isaiah, nevertheless, the Gemara wanted to go on and deal with the fact that it would appear that there was contradiction in these verses. And it cited each verse with an explanation. When we finished Mem Tet, Amud Beis, it cited a pasuk at Mispar Yamecha Emalei, Nun on the top, Elu Shnei Dorot, that this went to at least 2 generations, Mashlimim Lo, Zacha, if he merited it, it would continue, it would be fulfilled, Lo Zacha, Pochatin Lo, if he did not merit it, we would, I'm just reviewing what we finished yesterday. We would reduce it. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. That was the view of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Chachamim Amrim, but the sages said, the 3rd line down on the page, Zacha, if one merits it, Mosifin Lo, we add to him, Velo Zacha Pochtin Lo. If he doesn't merit it, they reduce it. Okay, that's where we stopped yesterday. Okay, Amru Lo. So they said to him, to Rabbi Akiva, Harehu Omer, but here he says, V'hosafti al yamecha chamesh esrei shana. That was written in the book of Isaiah, right? Amar lehem, right? So Rabbi Akiva now responds back to the sages who attempted to disagree with him. Mishelo, from his own, so to speak, destined time period. I'll explain it that way. Okay, is that okay, right? Okay, Hosifulo. That's where they add on to him. Okay, Teda, and no, Sheharei Navi Omeid Umitnabe. But here, however, says the Gemara, know that the prophet comes forward and he shares his, let's call it prophecy for the moment. Hine ben Nolad lebeit David. They're citing a pasuk that there will be a child born to the house of David. Okay, Yeshayahu Shmo. Okay, and Yoshia, in other words, his name will be Yoshiyahu. That his English is Josiah. Okay, the problem is he wasn't born yet. Va'adayan lo nolad Menashe. But this was presented by the prophet before even Menashe, who was the actual grandfather of Yoshiyahu, okay, was born. So how is that possible? Okay, Rabbanan, and the rabbis respond, well, how do they deal with it? Mi kativ michizkiyah. Are we really talking about Chizkiyahu? Okay, Leveit David kativ. The pasuk said that there will be some child born of the house of David. In other words, he will be an heir of the progeny of the house of David, but we don't know per se that it will be the grandson of Menashe. Okay, what happens? If it dealt with when Chizkiah himself was born, or if it comes from another person in the house of David. Okay? So therefore you can't use that as clear proof. Right? Okay, coming back to our Mishnah. Right? The Mishnah said, Ishto shemeta v'chulei, yevamto shemeta v'chulei. That whole list of when certain women would die, whether or not their sister would then be eligible for the widower, the divorcee, the yabam, etc., etc., etc. Okay? Ishto shemeta v'chulei. When it says that the wife dies, there we know from the Torah, right, that there's a clear statement that if the man's wife dies, that he is no longer subject to the Torah prohibition of Eshet Ach, and therefore he could marry the wife's sister. Okay. What about the others? Okay. Yivamto Shemeta v'chule. Right. Amar Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef the following. Kan Shana Rabbi. Okay. Mishnah she'ena tzricha. Interesting statement. Rav Yosef is saying that this long Mishnah was not necessary. Okay. In other words, why did Rebbe include it? Rebbe may have included it for other reasons. Okay? Normally, we would think that there would be an issue of a chiddush in including a Mishnah. There actually is, according to some Rishonim. Okay. One of the ones I found was that the Yavama situation might have been considered a chiddush. Okay, the Torah on the one hand clearly stated, right, that while one's wife is alive, you can't marry your sister, but when the wife dies.
That's why it's saying it's Richa, because
Right.
we know them in the Torah.
Right, that's clearly from the Torah. Okay, but these others, particularly, and maybe we would say, fine, if it's a Grusha situation, I could argue he divorced her, the woman is still alive, so therefore maybe here too, I could easily carry over the Torah's prohibition, implying she didn't dafka have to be his wife, but so long as that woman is alive that he was once married to, can't marry her sister. Okay, but if I'm saying it's his Yavama, okay, his sister-in-law, okay, he has no, right? Her sister would not be a direct blood relative of any kind to him. So that could be, according to some of the Rishonim, a chiddush as to why this Mishnah, why Rebbe included the Mishnah. But and therefore we finish Hadrana Lach HaCholetz. We finish that parak, right? Well, now what are we going to deal with in the new parak? I have my board right there, okay? And that's what I just want to put it up real quick. And now that I've already blocked it, we'll move this chair a little bit. Kept the marker. All right. And I'm just going to use it briefly because I think it will help us understand where the parak is going, because it's a very long Mishnah. So what do I have? I have, the Mishnah is going to tell us 4 means to be able to end a relationship. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Okay, to end a relationship. All right, on the one hand, I have Yibum, right? And then I also have the reverse of Yibum, let's call it Chalitza. All right. On the other hand, I have 2 other situations. Okay. I have here Ma'amar, and I have over here Get. Okay. Now, a couple of quick things. Number one, we know this is clearly defined by the Torah. Either one has to do Yibum or one has to do Chalitza. And these 2 items are the, I'll call it for the moment, bottom line as to how to end the Zika, the family relationship of this woman to brothers of her deceased husband, that family relationship. On the other side, we have 2 other rabbinical elements. Okay? And these rabbinical elements clarify one's intent, either in confirming a relationship, the ma'amar, or in dissolving a marriage. Now, could we argue that the rabbinic elements are of equal power to the Torah elements?
You mean if he did the mamar, he doesn't have to do the,
Or better still, maybe I want to argue if he gives a get, he doesn't have to do chalitza. Or if they're not of equal power, equal strength, whatever term we want to use,
Well, that we know clearly throughout.
then that way, but we don't know clearly, otherwise we wouldn't need this mission. All right?
Okay.
Why? Because we have another element here. Okay? I'm just looking at my notes. Okay? So that's the first big issue. How equal is the rabbinic enactments to the Torah enactments, Torah statements? The second situation, okay, as I'm going to put down here, am I dealing with one Yabam and one Yabama? Or maybe I'm dealing with one Yabam and two Yabamot. That's the sister-in-law, widowed sister-in-law. Okay. Or maybe I'm dealing with two Yabamim, brothers-in-law, and I still could then have to deal with either one
Or two.
or two. Okay? So that's what the Gemara, that's what we're going to see. Are these equal or not? And then what happens in terms of relationships? Okay, in this regard, 1 to 1, 1 to 2, or 2 to 1, or 2 to at least 2. Okay.
Does it help that we have only one wife now?
Guess it depends on what you can afford. When you live in Saudi Arabia, you know, I don't know. In any case, that's a quick, I felt, introduction to help us get into this new parak, right? We start off with the Hadranalach, we said, Hacholetz, our new parak, right? Is called, whatever it's called, right? Rabban Gamliel, that's what it is. Okay. Rabban Gamliel Omer, says Rabban Gamliel, Ein get achar get. Okay? One does not have a divorce after a divorce, or a divorce document. Okay? So here we start, what?
With the same woman?
We're starting off with the question of down here of multiple Yavamim or Yavamot, right? Because we have, maybe we've got two brothers. They're both brothers-in-law because the older brother died and the older brother had two wives. Okay? So can we say
You can give a get to one and a get to
to the other? Is that what he does?
And that's what a get, after get.
Right? And so the question is, because remember we've said that older brother had two wives and one brother does chalitza
Or even with one of them.
with one of them, that is poter, that exempts the other. Right? So that would seem to tell me that chalitza certainly is stronger than a get.
Yeah.
Okay? So Rabban Gamliel says, "Ein get achar get." You don't give one a get and then a second one again. Velo ma'amar achar ma'amar, and not one. Let's say ma'amar engagement, rabbinic engagement. I'll use that phrase. Rabbinic engagement. Okay? Achar ma'amar. Okay, after another rabbinic engagement. Velo be'ilah, achar be'ilah. And not do yibum after, and then follow that by another yibum. Okay? Velo chalitza, achar chalitza. And one doesn't do one chalitza, let's say with one, and another chalitza with the other. Okay, so these examples are again a single yabam dealing with two yabamot, two sisters-in-law. He has a zika, remember, with
Both of them.
both of them. Okay, now notice what's happened here. Again, we keep in mind the principle. Do yibum with one, or chalitza with one, you're poter the other co-wife. Okay? The chachamim omrim, but the sages say, and they're going to disagree with Rabban Gamliel. Okay? Yesh get achar get, that there is the possibility of one divorce and then another divorce. V'yesh ma'amar achar ma'amar, and there is the possibility of a rabbinic engagement and a rabbinic engagement. All right? Now here, when is that the case? It's when it's to the same yibama. Okay? So I could have, right, two brothers, okay, to the same one woman. Maybe each brother did not know, of the two brothers, surviving brothers, that the other brother made a ma'amar to the one widow. Okay?
Speak to each other.
Yeah, we know that can happen sometimes. All right? Okay. Aval, but, okay, says the Gemara. Lo achar be'ilah, okay? Right? V'yesh ma'amar chamamar. Aval, right? Lo achar be'ilah v'lo achar chalitza klum. But rather the rabbis hold after yibum with, let's say, with the one woman, or after chalitza with the one woman, there is nothing else, right? Okay, so whichever, as they say in Hebrew, kol hakodem zocheh, okay? Whoever acts first gets the hopefully benefit, okay? All right, Kate Sad, how is that possible? Asama Amar Biyamto. So now the Gemara is going to have to go into the whole explanation. Okay? Asama Amar Biyamto. Okay, Yavama number one, at least, made an Amar rabbinic engagement with his sister-in-law, widowed sister-in-law. V'natan la get. And then what happens? After giving her ma'amar, okay, which we said is, while it's in a rabbinic engagement, it is still almost as solid, almost as a normal engagement. To break that bond, that I'm going to say that potential marriage bond here, he has to give her a get. But has he broken the zika? Not yet. Right? Tzricha hemenu chalitza. He needs to give her chalitza. So he would have to do both, right? He would have to do both get and chalitza in that situation. Okay? Asa ma'amar v'chalitza. If he made a ma'amar, rabbinic engagement, and did chalitza, tzricha hemenu get. She would need from him, I'm going to say for the moment, only a get, only the divorce bill. Okay? Asa ma'amar uba'al. Okay, he made the rabbinic engagement.
It was the chalitza.
Chalitza
the
broke the
Zika,
zika, but it
he still
didn't.
made the mimar,
but he-
so he has to divorce
But he
her.
didn't make. Right,
Yeah,
he didn't.
made
bre-
the mimar
He
before has
didn't
to
break
divorce
the
her.
engagement. Right. Okay. Asam ma'amar uba'al. Okay, he made the rabbinic engagement and went ahead and married her. Harezo kimitzvata. That is the fullest way to fulfill the mitzvah. Okay, we go on. Another
So in other
situation.
words, the mission is saying that just doing the act of Yavama is not the best way. First, you should do Mima first.
Not necessarily.
Isn't that what the mission is saying? I'm on.
No,
How is it
no.
mitzvah?
Okay, I didn't learn it that way. You may be right.
I mean, that's what the words say.
Okay,
You could-
but I learned it that you have really two levels of relationship. You have a Zika level and you have a, let's call it for the lack of another term, marital level. And you must do acts that if you're going to break the relationship in any way, you have to do sometimes two acts, right? Two deeds, right? Because you have various possibilities. One, which clearly tells us one is rabbinic, one is Torah, is a Doraita, okay? And so therefore this seems to indicate that.
Also that the Mima is rabbinic, but the Rabbanan wanted the whole situation to look like.
Right.
Those things.
Exactly, right.
The Rabbanan by Minnesota would be about Papa.
Right. Okay. So in other words, it's so now what happens? Again. Right? So what happens? So we pick up now. Natan get v'asam ma'amar. Okay, let's say we're talking to one woman who was the widowed sister-in-law. One gave her a get, and then maybe another brother did a ma'amar. If we're talking two brothers to the same one yavama, one woman, tzricha get v'chalitza. She needs both even though one gave a get, the other one who made the ma'amar to break has to give her a get, and at least one of them has to do chalitza. Okay? Natan get uba'al. Okay, let's say there were two brothers again. One gave her a get, one yibum, right? What does she need? Tzricha get.
I think it's the same brother.
Yeah, only one.
Same brother.
Nasan
Nasan get Ubal. After he gave her the get, he had relations.
Yeah,
Right.
only one. Brother.
Tzricha get v'chalitza. Okay, there he has to give her a get. In other words, so that would follow Rabban Gamliel. Okay. Right. I'm going to go back and look if that's just the one there. Okay. Anyway, tzricha get v'chalitza. Right. Natan get v'chalatz. If he gave her the get and then the chalitza, ein echar chalitza klum. There is nothing more to be done after chalitza. Okay. Again, reinforcing the fact that either chalitza or yibum. After that, nothing. Right? Chalatz va'asam ma'amar. One did chalitza and then ma'amar. Natan get uba'al. Okay, get and then relations. O ba'al va'asam ma'amar. Or again, if it's the same one, ba'al and then ma'amar. That's why I felt it had to be two brothers there. Okay, ba'al and va'asam ma'amar. Natan get v'chalatz. All of these situations. Ein achar chalitza klum. There is nothing else after chalitza. Okay. Now let's go over to the next amud. Okay. Achat yibama, achat liyabam. The same principles that we just saw listed in that whole Mishnah, right? Apply whether it is the right yabama or to the yabam.
Yavama achas.
Right?
Yavam,
Echas
and
yabama, echas
One
liyabam.
Yivam, one
Okay?
Yavam, and one
liyabam echad, to
Right.
just to a single woman and a single man. Okay? Ve'achas shtei yavamot liyabam echad. And they apply when there are two yavamot, two separate widowed sisters-in-law, okay, and a single yavam, a single brother-in-law expected to fulfill. Kate Sad, how is that the situation? Okay, asa ma'amar bazo, ma'amar bazo. All right, he did ma'amar, rabbinic engagement with this one. He did it with that one. Excuse me. Tzrichot shnei gitin v'chalitza. He needs to give, okay, a single fellow, okay? Again, whether it's one yabama or two, he needs to give, in this case, two gittin and do with one chalitza. Ma'amar bazo v'get bazo. If he did rabbinic engagement with one and a bill of divorce with the other, what does he have to do? Tzricha get v'chalitza. He has to give the one he gave the ma'amar to a get, okay, and at least with one of them chalitza. Ma'amar bazo uba'al etzo. He gave a ma'amar to one, and so to speak, relations with the other. What does he have to do? Tzrichot shnai gitim v'chalitza. There they need two gittin, okay? Because deoraita, relations, is a means of kedushin, okay? And therefore, to end that aspect, he has to give a get, and then to end the zika, has to do chalitza. Ma'amar bazo v'chalatz lazo. Okay, one he gave the ma'amar, and the other he did chalitza. Harishonat tzricha get. The first one, the one who got the ma'amar, she needs a bill of divorce to end that rabbinic engagement. Get lazo v'get lazo. Divorce to this one, divorce to that one. Tzrichot himenu chalitza. They both need from him chalitza. Now, he doesn't do chalitza to both. He can do chalitza just to one. Okay, but they both still are in a status of zika. And so therefore one of them at least needs chalitza. Get lazo uba'al edzo, a get to one and relations with one. Tzricha get v'chalitza. In that case, he has to give the one he had the ma'am, right? Had relations with the get, and then still do chalitza. Get lazo uma'amar bazo. Okay, gave a get to one and the rabbinic engagement with one. All right, so here we're still talking about one yavam and two yavamot, two sisters-in-law. Tzricha get v'chalitza. Again, still needs a get, one of them, and chalitza. Get
If he performed Yibam with both of them.
what?
If he performed Yibam with both of them. No, that's us.
Can't do that either.
Only
Okay.
give 'em in one.
All right. All right. Now, going on. Get lazo v'chalatz lazo. All right, a get to one and chalitza to one. Ein echar chalitza klum. It's nothing more to be done after the chalitza. Okay, now we'll see if we're going to find your question, Steve. Right? Chalatz v'chalatz. He did chalitza for each of them. O chalatz v'asam ma'amar. Or he did chalitza to one and a ma'amar to the other. Natan get uba'al. Okay. He gave a get to one and had relations with one. Oh, Baal. There's your question, Steve, right there. All right. Oh, Baal va'asam ma'amar. Or he had relations with one and did a ma'amar with the other. Natan get v'chalatz. Or he gave a get and chalitza. Ein echar chalitza klum. Okay. There's nothing more after we done. Now, bein yabam echad l'shtei yabamot, whether it is one brother-in-law and two widowed sister-in-laws, bein shnei yavamim liyabama echad, or whether it's two brothers-in-law and one sister-in-law. Okay? Chalatz va'asa ma'amar. Okay, if he did chalitza and then did a ma'amar. Natan get uba'al. Okay. Right, so again, it could be one gave the get, one had relations. O ba'al va'asa ma'amar. Or one had relations and another had made a ma'amar. V'natan get v'chalatz. Or one gave a get and then the other did chalitza. Ein achar chalitza klum. There is further, again, nothing more to be done after chalitza. Bein b'tchila, bein ba'emtza, bein b'sof. In other words, whether it was done at the beginning, done in the middle, or done in the end. Okay? In other words, is the order of how one acts with any four of these top items, okay, make a difference. V'habi'ilah bisman shehi b'tchila, if it's done, if yibum is fulfilled at the very outset, okay, what happens? Ein achareha klum. There is nothing else more to be done. Okay? Because the yibum would then be poter, the other, if it was a second widowed sister-in-law, she would be exempted. Be'emtza, if it's done, however, in the middle. Okay? What happens? Ubasof yesh echaraha klum. Okay, and I'm going to translate that a little differently. Okay? And I'm going to say if it was done in the middle or at the end, there is an additional act needed to be done. That's what the Gemara means when it says yesh achareha. Okay, is there something to be done? Yes. Rabbi Nechemya Omer, says Rabbi Yechemna. Okay. Echad be'ilah ve'echad chalitza. Okay. Let's assume he says that there we have these one yabam, one brother-in-law, with two sisters and widowed sisters-in-law, and with one he does one thing, the other he does chalitza. Okay, here we clearly can see the machloket between Rabban Gamliel and the sages, right? Bein betchila, bein be'emtza, bein basof. Whether it was at the beginning, in the middle, or the end, ein achareha klum. There is nothing further to be done. Okay, again. All right. This is that, so you can see it's a pretty lengthy Mishnah.
Very nice.
Okay. All right. But you can understand why I tried to put it out on the diagram, excuse me, to understand at times it's one yabam with one yabama, one yabam with two yabamot, or two yabamim with one, or two with two. Okay, now we can go right into the Gemara. All right, what is the Gemara going to tell us? All right, is it going to try to explore all of these varieties of situations? Okay. Okay. Ad kan lo plige, up to this point they don't disagree, namely Rabban Gamliel and the sages. Ela beget achar get, with the example of one get and then another get. Ma'amar achar ma'amar, or one rabbinic engagement followed by another rabbinic engagement. Aval get achar echad biyabama, but when there is a get given to one yabama, uma'amar achar biyabama, Uma'amar echad, and one ma'amar to one other yibama, if they were talking about two women, mahani, that's viable. Okay, my tama, what's the
So
reasoning?
it's after the Yavama would have, after, you don't have to do anything for the other.
Right? Okay. Excuse me. Mahani, my tama, what's the reasoning? And more, I would say as follows: Rabbanan, get biyabama mahani. So the rabbis ask, simply, I put in there, simply giving a get to one of the sisters-in-law, that works. Mahani, that's viable. Mishum de mahani ba'alma. We might say that that acts because that is a common means of of ending a relationship. Okay, so that view would seem to imply that, at least in theory, there were some rabbis who felt that the get had
The same koach as the
same
chalitza.
koach as chalitza. Okay, why? We have to understand.
It helps it helps everywhere else,
Right.
except in the case
Right.
of,
De'iyamart lo mahan. Exactly, because if you were to say that the get would not be a valid means of ending a relationship, and here I'm going to slip in whether it's marriage or Zika, okay? Amre, people would say, get lahotzia, v'chalitza lahotzia. A get gets her out of the relationship. A chalitza removes her from the relationship. Umi de get lo mahani, and if the get doesn't work, chalitza nami lo mahani, then maybe chalitza also doesn't work. Okay, so there was a concern that in the popular mind, okay, both of these end relationships, that they are considered equal and not separate because one's rabbinic and one is d'oraita. Va'ate lemib'al achar chalitza. And then it's possible that one would have relations with a woman after chalitza. And in that case, he would transgress the Torah prohibition then regarding a brother's, right, house, building a brother's household. Umay tama amur rabbanan ma'amar biyabama mahani. And therefore, what is the reason that the rabbis also hold that say that regarding the ma'amar, that is valid? Mishum de mahani ba'alma. Because there too, we see that seems to work in general. Okay? The iyamart lo mahani, because if you said that the ma'amar did not have theoretically the same koach, the same power, force, as a, I'm going to put it in quotes, normal engagement, right? What would happen? Amre, the common people again would say as follows: Ma'amar liknot, ubia liknot. Okay, that the giving of the ma'amar allows him to acquire the woman, and the bia, conjugal relations, allows him to acquire. Umi de ma'amar lo mahani, and if you say that the ma'amar is not valid, doesn't work, bia nami lo mahanya, it would appear then that bia also doesn't work. And what happens? Va'ate lemib'al achar bia. And then you could have a situation, right, where you might have a situation of bia achar bia, okay? In other words, have bia with a co-wife after having bia with the Yavama. Okay, and again, that's not,
awesome in the Torah.
that's asur min Torah. Right? So what happens? Umay tama amur rabbanan bia psula yesh achareha klum. And therefore asks the Gemara, what then could be the reason of the rabbis that they would say that, I'm going to use the phrase, second bia, or call it bia with the co-wife, okay, is an invalid bia, and after that, there should be nothing, no further act. Amre, people might say again, ibia achar haget. If we're talking about relations then after the giving of a get, okay, what happens? Gzeira bia achar haget, mishum bia achar chalitza. Maybe we would wind up with a situation where we would have relations after a divorce, okay? And also we would have relations after a situation of chalitza, which would be very problematic, okay? Ve'ibia achar ma'amarhi, and if it was a situation of relations after having made the rabbinic engagement, gzera bia achar ma'amar, mishum bia achar bia. The rabbis can make a decree preventing that relations with the co-wife after an engagement, okay, lest there be a situation again of possible bia achar bia. Okay, that case. Umay tama amur rabbanan han. And what's the reason that the rabbi said this? Chalitza psula, eina chareha klum. That the rabbi said that after, if he did chalitza and then chalitza to the two different co-wives, what happens then? Why is the second one invalid? Eina chareha klum. Why did they say there's nothing more that's necessary? Amre, the people would say, my ligzor. What need is there for the rabbis to make a gezerah, a decree here? Nigzor chalitza achar haget, mishum chalitza achar chalitza. Maybe we should make a decree and require chalitza after the giving of a get, lest people think that you need chalitza for one after chalitza from the other. Okay? Kol kihani tachlotz v'tizo. One we say normally, let them just be the chalitza and they would go about their business, right? Ligzor chalitza achar ma'amar, mishum chalitza achar bia. Okay, or maybe one should make the decree to require chalitza after the rabbinic engagement, lest there be chalitza after conjugal relations. Okay, so to have relations with one and do chalitza with the other, if there's two wives. What would happen then? Atu chalitza achar ma'amar. Since that would be a situation of chalitza after engagement, mi lo ba'ayi get l'ma'amar, wouldn't we then still require a get because of the ma'amar? Fine, chalitza would break the zika relationship, but the chalitza doesn't end the quote marital relationship, right? Chalitza achar bia nami ba'ayi get l'biuta. Okay, so therefore we might say that chalitza after bia also would require a get, okay, because of his having relations. Amar Rabba, this Rava Mai Tamar. What's the reasoning to Rabba and Gamliel? We go over a little bit on the top of Nun Aleph. Misfeka le get, because there is a doubt in terms of the koach of the get. Idachi, ilodachi. Okay, and that's where we're going to, all right? Okay, whether it is, I'm going to use the word beneficial or sufficient, okay, or if it's not sufficient, all right? And that's the question. Ma'amar ikane ilokane, whether rabbinic engagement acquires or it doesn't acquire. Get idache ilodache, or the question of a get, does it, again, put it off, in other words, cut the relationship, or it doesn't cut the relationship, all right? And that's where we're going to stop right there, okay? Because then we'll pick up the question of, does it depend on the order of things being there, okay?
What time is the late meeting?
7:35. Okay.
Harvey, wake up. I'll get you cookies today, Harvey.
I don't think Harvey is the only one who looks forward to having the
I think
cookies.
you, no? Here's your real pizza. Where's my coffee? Harvey.
All right. Okay. Yeah,
10 years ago,
really?
it was 92.
Kanahara. Uh-huh. All right.